We are you morning crew. I am George Daigle. We have the Lioness with me this morning. Good morning, Lioness.
Good morning, George. How are you, darling?
Great, grand, and glorious. I'm feeling fine, feeling good, and I'm ready to get into some more of the sizzling subjects and trending topics. Ladies and gentlemen, quite often we join hands with organizations in and around the country, especially right here in Atlanta where we're based. And today we're going to talk to a couple of organizations that are doing some great work for the community. As we hear over and over again, all of the legislation that is being passed that is anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ, anti-transgender youth, we have organizations that are trying to fill in the gap and bring some unity in the community. And today we're talking with Leanne Rubenstein, who is one of the directors and members, organizers of Compassionate Atlanta. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning. So happy to be here.
We are happy to have you here. So as we get ready to get into this conversation, tell us about the organization and what it is that you do.
So Compassionate Atlanta, it's actually part of a global movement all around compassion. It's really, I like to think of it as, everybody has a PR department, but humanity doesn't really have a PR department. So we're the PR department for humanity. Let's be kind to one another. It seems like such a simple thing, but it makes huge ripple effects. And especially when it comes to how we think about each other, how we vote, how we look at legislation and how it's affecting other people. So we are all about advancing the culture of compassion in our communities.
And it seems to be lacking so much. Again, as I was talking earlier in the introduction, there is so much vitriol against, men against women, black against white, Christians against non-Christians. It's just, this whole vitriol. If you turn on television, you're just beaten down with that. So it's so important that we have people that are starting first with kindness and empathy. Lioness, is there something you wanted to add or ask?
George, I'm so excited about the intentionality behind the name Compassionate ATL. And I love the idea of being the PR for humanity. I'm so compassionate about what we're doing. My question for you is, in what ways are you seeking to achieve that mission?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we see compassion as the wide umbrella. So almost anything you tell me, I'll tell you how it fits into compassion. So what we do is we respond to the asks of the community. When we first started, I was calling people, telling them about us. But now 8 years later, they're calling us and saying, hey, I have this idea. And what's amazing is supporting people with good ideas. We've all got it in us. So we work with individuals, but we also work with organizations. So we have a program called Compassionate Cities of Georgia, where we're working with rural partners that are so lacking in healthcare that we are trying to support those grassroots partners doing good work in the rural community to bring healthcare to folks, to bring education to folks that are not getting it. It's amazing that we live in this very rich country and so many people are going without. So that's one of the things we do. Another initiative like this one is working with the Center for Civil and Human Rights on it's called Youth Belong for LGBTQ youth. And so we have a number of different projects that are working with the community who comes to us and says, hey, we've got this project, coalition building. We need your strength. We need your ideas. And it's amazing what people can get done together when they just put their heads together. And, many hands make light work is really what we're all about.
Now, I do have a question, and I'm a trans youth listening right now, and I'm excited about what you're talking about. And so in what way, and I'm specifically bringing trans youth into the conversation because of the laws and what's going on. So if I'm a trans youth and I hear the name Compassionate ATL and I want to participate in something or get engaged in some way, what does that look like?
So we have a big event coming up in September called Compassioncon. And it's about how to just be in community with other people, learn about resources, be kind to one another, and really be our authentic selves which I think for trans youth is a huge thing. Where can they show up and be their authentic selves without any judgment? So we have a website, compassioncon.org. There are ways to volunteer, be a part of that. We're working with several partners who work with youth. And so it's really about being part of community is so important. And it's for so many people, how do we find that community? And so Compassionate Atlanta is one of those places where there's no judgment. You come, we love you as you are. And that can do just amazing things for the soul. Turn off the TV. The legislation is bad. It's really hard when you're targeted. And so we want you to have a space where you can come and just be who you are without any judgment.
You know, this is vital right now, as we were saying in this climate that we're in, and Lioness had spoken about this so eloquently before. So I'm going to borrow this from you, Lioness. But when we leave our house, we agree to a social contract. And that is being able to treat other people with compassion, with respect, the same way that we want to be treated, we should treat other people. And so when we look at this organization, this is a great opportunity to have people from all facets of the community to come together and agree upon this social contract that we're all really under, without writing, but when you walk out in society, we should all have that. What programs do you have that will teach and or enrich the compassion that may be lacking in the community right now?
So what we do is education. And part of the education we teach is compassion. So what does compassion mean? First of all, it starts with self. You have to be good to yourself. You have to understand yourself. You have to be kind to yourself. So all those negative thoughts that we hear in our head, we all have that self-critic. So how do we tell that self-critic to just take a back seat and love ourselves as we are? And there are lots of ways that you can practice self-compassion, knowing what's going on in your body, what's going on in your mind, and you can really shift your mind thinking differently. It's like, I think about like couch to 5K. I don't know if you've heard that. One of my friends has done that, right? So you're on the couch, you have no idea how you're going to run a 5K, but you start slowly, you keep going, and then you don't know what you're going to do in the morning without a run. Compassion is the same kind of thing. If we train our brains, we start in a certain way and think we're never going to get there. But little by little, we can actually change the synapses in our brain to be more compassionate to ourselves. Then there's compassion for others and compassion in systems. And so when we look at systems, what we do is we do a compassion in leadership training. We talk to students at Rollins School of Public Health. How do you go out into the world and become compassionate in the way you see things, the decisions that you make? And so as a part of a system, how do you create change by bringing compassion into it? So rules are made for certain reasons, but sometimes they don't achieve what they're supposed to. They actually cause harm. So how do we push back against that and make those kind of changes?
An interesting conversation. Compassion. It's very, very easy. An easy word to spell too. COMPASSION. And you can go to their website and get more information. That is compassionatl.org. And be on the lookout for Compassioncon. I love that concept. Compassioncon happens in September. And how do they get more information if they want to be a part of this?
So compassioncon.org. And we are actually compassionateatl.org. But Compassion Atlanta would probably get you to there as well. We'd say, let your passion for compassion be your compass. So really, It's about shifting your mindset and thinking about others as we are part of all this human family, right? We all want the same things of safety and security and love. And so we'd love folks to get involved, and we're so glad that you're putting this message out there that, we are good, authentic, beautiful people as we are, and the world wouldn't be the same without any one of us.
Absolutely. It is George. It is the Lioness, and we are here continuing our conversation this morning. Earlier, you heard us begin our conversation with Leanne Rubenstein from Compassionate compassionatl.org. Get some great information about that. It's all about giving and following the social contract, giving compassion. And it's absolutely easy. It's absolutely free. So just give it away. And now joining us in the conversation is one of the organizers and directors of LGBTQ Institute, TimM. Good morning, TimM.
Morning. How is everybody?
Everybody is doing wonderful. Thank you so much for
Good
joining us.
morning.
Now, this is an interesting name, Tim. So TimM. We're going to start with that, and I keep saying Tim, but because I want to say Tim, but it's TimM. Please explain so we can move forward from that, because that's a point of interest for me.
Well, I think my name actually has an interesting origin in that I was born Timothy, stuttered as a kid, and so my family affectionately would refer to me as TimM, which became TimM when I wanted to be cooler, and my mom would just like add an apostrophe. And so I think for me, it's just a reminder of how something that can be seen as an impediment can become a source of. So I keep that name, and I said one day I'd be so famous everybody'd be stuttering. So
well, that is very interesting. And now the mystery is solved. TimM, I got it. So tell us a little bit about the LGBTQ Institute, what you do there, and how vital it is to our community right now.
Absolutely. I think historically, and I started as an inaugural board member for the LGBTQ Institute in 2015, was to basically build a bridge between advocates and academics. I think in our current moment, we have shifted to a time where the urgency around anti-LGBTQ legislation and other things, culture wars, has really created a moment where we have to ramp up our support for young people in particular who are hearing a lot of this vitriol about the community. And so it's really been important working with Compassioncon and other partners to provide safe and affirming spaces for young people, to create pathways for mentorship between adults and practitioners in the community so they can support and be resources for young people, and really do a lot of advocacy education. Young people want to know, where do these laws come from? What's the legislative process? Like, how can we mobilize and be a voice to kind of empower ourselves in our communities?
If in this time, and you started out with that in the conversation, in this time where we see so much anti-LGBTQ legislation, and we look at the youth who are LGBTQ or non-binary, wherever you fall on the spectrum, what does your institute do to help kind of galvanize some self-worth? Because this legislation is telling them you don't count, you don't matter, we want to make you invisible. What does your organization do to help remedy that?
Well, I think importantly, because initially the Institute was that connection between academics and advocates, we've published twice now one of the most comprehensive Southern surveys on LGBTQ life and experience. And so sometimes it's important to get the data so you can actually show people like, hey, like these are the experiences of people. And so we see stats like that, LGBTQ youth, 25% of them, in particular trans and non-binary, would skip school or classes due to fear of harassment or bullying in schools, or that many non-binary and trans people will avoid medical care because of fear that they will not be treated fairly. And these all have some pretty significant impacts when you start looking at the community. If you're not going to the doctor, then you don't know what's going on, right? And I think in particular, coming from the African-American Black experience, I know well about medical mistrust. I know well about skepticism about the medical complex. And so you add to that, sexual orientation, gender identity, and in particular for those in the LGBTQ community who are people of color, that's where we actually see the most, troubling statistics and data. So getting that data is just a starting point. Now we're at the point, we just released our survey, I think in March, April, from 2022. Now that we've got the data, how do we utilize that data to do the advocacy, to mobilize communities, to show the awareness? Because it's not coming out of nowhere. One really interesting data point in our survey demonstrated that about 25 or so percent of LGBTQ adults who did the survey said they understood and knew who they were by the time they were 10. If you take that up to age 14, over 50% of those people say, hey, like I knew I was LGBTQ, by the time I was 14. And so that's an important data point, because a lot of what we're seeing out there is this idea of grooming, that people are grooming people. I know personally, I wasn't groomed. I just wanted to see myself reflected and feel like I wasn't a unicorn with two devil horns, right?
Right. Yeah.
The kids aren't being groomed. Kids just want to see themselves reflected in a healthy, positive manner so they can actually grow up and say, hey, like, this is a life I get to have. And so I think, again, that's a place where the data actually becomes a very powerful tool in debunking some of these narratives.
I was going to say, I thank you so much for sharing what you do in such a thorough manner. And you spoke on something that I often can experience as someone that is an intersectional part of this community as well, being Black and being trans and being a woman. I definitely can relate to making sure, to wanting to make sure that the work that you're doing and the data that you're collecting is accurately reflecting all communities. Speaking of that, I like to think that the best way to actually collect data and to reach communities through an intersectional approach. And I guess first, let me say, I am, outside of what I do here on the radio, I am the Director of Development and Program Manager at the Trans Women of Color Healing Project in Tyrone, Georgia. We deal with rural communities. TimM, my question for you and for you, Leanne, is what is your way of reaching out to marginalized Black people of color communities? How are you reaching trans people, particularly Black trans folk in this moment, to bring them into this work? Because a lot of times there are a lot of well-intending organizations that are doing exciting work on our behalf, but how are we bringing these communities to the table? And so my query for both of you is, how are you bringing these people that are in the intersections to the table?
Yeah, I can start, and certainly I want to hear from Leanne, but I think for me, like you have to be in community, right? And so I'm not one of these academics or researchers or executive directors that stays in my office and does research, right? Like I'm at the clubs, I'm at the parks, I'm talking to people, I'm going to community centers. We're building partnerships. So we've been working with people at Lost and Found Youth. I've been talking to the young Black trans girls there and giving them spaces and empowerment. We actually just had an event on June 29th where several of them shared poetry. So for me, it's really about like being in community and not just talking about community, not just reflecting community, but how can you be seen as a part of community? And I think because of my own experience and background, that's a way that I lead. And I think you're right. We got to encourage more of the people that are actually reflecting and responding to community to actually be in community, because there are insights you're going to get there that you're not going to get from a survey.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. You have to be in community, and otherwise it doesn't work. There's a quote, nothing about us without us is for us, right? So one of the things that we do, I mentioned Compassionate Cities of Georgia. We're working with 3, soon to be 4. These are Black women-led organizations, small grassroots, trusted community members. They're doing the work. They've been doing the work, but nobody's recognizing them. So we're here to say, hey, this is who's doing the work. You don't have to be a big, huge nonprofit to get all the money. We need to level that playing field and make sure that people who are grassroots, just like your organization, are getting the funds, because they're the ones that are impacting lives every single day. And it is actually a matter of life and death. You know that too well, sadly, that young trans youth are at risk, and trans women of color are at risk. We've got to change that narrative, and we do that by working together with community, and then working together on an advocacy level so that people who are not part of that community understand it's not us and them. It's a we thing. It's we're all together.
Yeah.
When there's oppression of one, then we all suffer. So how do we get that message across? But it really is about working together with folks. I'm going to put in a little plug for another group we have. It's called Pride in Mother Tongue. And it is for LGBTQ refugees and immigrants who may not have any community that they can find a safe place because their communities of origin, which happens for many, many folks I know, especially in the South or everywhere, that when you come out, your birth family or community is not there for you. So how do you find your chosen family? So Pride in Mother Tongue is all about that, and finding a space. We have an Instagram account, and finding that space where you can come together with other folks and really feel at home and feel, again, your authentic self is beautiful. And so that's how we work within community. It's just exactly what you're saying, Lioness. We got to be together, and we got to work with the folks on the ground and recognize that importance of our community leaders.
Certainly. And before we go, once again, I want you to touch on how they can get involved, Leanne first, involved with Compassioncon. Again, that sounds like an exciting event, and how they can get in touch with your organization really quickly.
So it's compassioncon.org or compassionateatl.org, and Pride in Mother Tongue is on Instagram. So check us out on all those spaces, and hopefully our Compassioncon will also be working with the Youth Belong and the Institute.
And TimM, how can we find you?
Yes, you can find out about all the different work I'm doing at lgbtqinstitute.org. There's a tab for our youth programs. You can actually check out the survey. Definitely support our events. I mean, it's been great working with Leanne, and certainly we have an event coming up, September, Leanne?
30th, September 30th.
September 30th.
Indicator.
I think it's really important as we have these conversations around compassion, as we have these conversations around the representation for LGBTQ people of color, that we really can be a central part of that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in, it is George, it is the Lioness. You've been speaking or listening to a conversation with some important organizations here in the community that are making a difference. So use the information that we've given you. We'll post it below our YouTube video for this as well. And continue to listen. This is the We Are You Morning Crew.
The We Are You Morning Crew. Download the We Are You Radio app.
Turn it up loud.
Use the shout out feature to talk directly to your favorite station. Louder. It's available in your app store. Search WERU Radio, one word, today.